Welcome to Programming Rainbow. In this video, we will continue on Conway's Game of Life in the Lua language using the Love2D game library. So if you're just starting out with this video, you want to go to github.com, Programming Rainbow, Conway's Game of Life, Love2D. You want to copy that URL and then use git clone to clone the repository, move inside of it, and you'll see something like this. So since we are continuing on from the second video, this is the third video and the final video, you'll want to probably delete these Lua files here. You can use something like rm*.lua to delete the Lua files in the top level directory, and then copy, because those are the final project files, and you want to copy the video files over from video 2 folder into the top level directory. And that will have your code be exactly where we are starting with today in the third video. Okay, let me just show you where we left off with. So it's kind of running itself from a random screen. So we can clear the screen, we can make a random screen over and over again, and we can let it run. We want to be able to change the speed. We want to be able to edit the board. We would like to have some kind of display up here that's showing what's happening. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to kind of finish it up so we can actually make it more useful to us and funner to interact with. Okay, so the first thing that we could do is set up the display. So we can just, we have a font already over here. If you've watched the prior to series I've run for Lua Love2D, I've shown how to load fonts and use them. So we're going to just do that. I'm not going to really show the pages on how to do it since I've done it already in 2 different video series. So please refer back to those. So I'm just going to put a comment up here saying load and set font. And I'm just going to call this one font. It's going to be kept inside the game table. love.graphics.newFont. And we need the file where it's called, let me show you over here again. It's called freesansbold.ttf, and it's in the fonts folder. And then we can also put a pixel size of this font at 24. You can change it to a different size right here, and you can put a different font in as well if you wish to. So that's setting the TrueType font and the size of it. Now we need to actually set that font to be used. So it's going to be love.graphics.setFont. And we're going to set the font that we just did, which is the self.font. That's the font that we just created right there. Okay, so that's going to set our font for us to use. So if we go down to, if we go down here to where we're drawing the whole game, right at the bottom of this method, I want to set the color to white because we've been setting it to other colors. Up here we set it to black, then we set it to gray. So I'm going to set it to white for the text. Graphics, set color. So white would just be 111 because it's a 0 to 1 and it's red, green, blue. So white 1 is all the way turned on, and red, green, and blue all the way turned on is white. So that's going to be 1, 1, 1. Now to draw the speed that this game is running at, I'm going to use the love.graphics.print. That uses the font to print text onto the screen. Covered this in the beginner's guide to Lua and Love2D, and also in the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow series, that Lua and Love2D. So again, if you want a deeper explanation of all these things, go check out one of those 2 series because I went in greater depth in explaining them. So what I want to do is I want to just straight up print speed colon and then a number. So speed colon space, and then I want an actual number after it. So to concatenate strings, we just use the dot dot. And now I'm just going to put a number here. And my numbers for the speed of the delay of this is going to be between 1 and 64. 64 being the slower end, the game's really slow, and 1 being there is no delay and it's very fast. So the center of that is actually 8. Because what I'm doing is I'm doubling it each time. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. So 8 is kind of the center of this. So I'm going to pick 8 as the normal speed. So we're going to see some math here. So it's going to be 8.0. I'm going to divide this by self delay target, not count target. Okay, so what this is doing is if it's at 8, 8 divided by 8 is just going to be 1. That's going to say normal speed. Let's say it's at 16. So if it's at 16, that's a slower than normal speed. And 8 divided by 16 is going to give us a half. So it's going to be 0.5 is the speed. And 32 is 0.25. And then 64 will be 0.125. Something like that. Okay, so this is basically creating the string speed and then concatenating it with this calculated number right here. And then the next set is the X and the Y. Remember, this is the top left-hand corner, the origin of the text. So basically right where the S is, the very top left-hand corner of the S is the number that I'm putting in where I want that to be on the screen. And I'm just going to put it at 1010. That means this is going to be in the top left-hand corner, 10 pixels from the far left side of the screen and 10 pixels from the top. Okay. So let's just see if that is all working. Okay, right now we do have this speed, and it says 1. Because again, it's defaulting right now to 8, and we're dividing about 8, so we're just getting 1. Okay, so let's change the speed. So I want the speed, like I said, to stay in the bounds, or speed, the delay time to stay in the bounds of 1 to 64. So I'm going to make 2 methods, one called speed up and one called slow down. And I'm going to put it above update. So let's start with speed up. And I'm using camel case for these method calls. So when I speed up, I actually want to make the number smaller. Okay, but I only want to be able to do this if my number is greater than 1. If it's 1, I don't want to make it any smaller because 1 needs to be as small as it goes. So I should only be running this if it's 2, not 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is check what the delay target is. And if it's greater than 1, I'll just divide it by 2. And that's pretty simple. The other one is going to be very much the same. So I'm just going to yank this and paste it. And this one's going to be slow down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, as long as it's smaller than 64, and I'm going to multiply it by 2. So that'll give us speed up and slow down. We have to link this up in the main file. So if we go to main, over here, what I'm going to use is the up arrow key for speeding up and the down arrow key for slowing down. And this is just game, speed, up. down, then game slow down. Okay, let's see if that's all connected up. Okay, so we got speed up to 8. And now when we slow it down, we can get it all the way down to 0.25. Okay. Now let's put a pause in there. So since we're already in this file, let's put the pause as space. So I'm just going to put space here. I'm going to call a method I haven't created yet. It's just going to be called pause. I think I have 2 ends here on accident. Just check. Okay. So I'm not going to run it because pause doesn't exist yet. So between clear and update, I'm going to put pause in, and it's just going to be a Boolean toggle. Very simple thing. And I'm going to be using a Boolean is pause, so I do need to create that up here. I'm going to set it initially to false. And down here, we've seen this many times before, how this toggle works. I'm just going to check it and toggle it to whatever the opposite is. Self. So if it is true, I'm going to set it to false. It's just literally toggling the Boolean from one side or the other. So this if only, this happens if it's true. So if this is true, I'm setting it to false. Else, if it's not true, I'm setting it to true. And that's being called from main. And what we need to do is we need to put it in the update. So we're going to wrap this update into another if statement. Well, we're not even going to check anything if it's in the pause state. Now I'm using if not is paused. I could say if playing. I could have switched the toggle to be the opposite, saying if playing instead. But I'm just going to leave it the way I have it. This is going to update if is paused is not true. So if you don't like that logic of that, how it's like double negative, you could say is playing instead of is paused. So you could say if is playing. But I'm just going to leave it. It's good enough. And I'm just going to put another end down here. So that's going to allow us to pause and unpause. So let's just make sure this is working. Okay, that's space bar. That's unspace. I'm going to speed it up. I'm going to change the speed of it while it's paused. Oh yeah, it does change in the code as well, so that's quite good. So I actually want to say if it's paused or not. So in my code I already have, I have it saying either the speed or if it's paused, but I actually want to be able to see the speed because sometimes you pause it and you want to speed up or slow down the speed and you can't see what your speed is until you unpause it. So I'm going to try to change my code real quick and make sure that both of those things are on the screen at the time. So in this draw down here, I was putting in an if statement on this check and paused and either printing this or printing whether it's paused or not. So what think I'm going to do is just put paused below it maybe. So yeah, I'm going to just give that a go. It's not actually in my notes. I'm just going to change it. So I'm going to say if So if it is paused, we can print paused, and I'm just thinking about where to put it. So I want to put it below. So right now, X is at 10 and our Y is at 10. And I know the height of the text is actually 24. So if I were to take 10, add 24, that gets me to the bottom of the text, and then add another 10. So that would be 44. So if I put this at 1044, it might just be below it. Hopefully I'm right. But if you change the size of your text, you'll have to come through here and change this number as well, because if you make your text bigger, then it might be sitting on top of this. So just keep that in mind. These are magic numbers I'm putting in. The scaling the size of the text is not going to work the way scaling the size of the game screen and the cell size dynamically changes. Okay, there we go. So it says paused. So I can change the speed while it's paused. Yeah, that's nice. Maybe exclamation mark. I don't know. We could do that. Okay, so we have the game pausing. We're changing the speed of the game. What we really want to do is be able to edit the game. So I'm going to go into main real quick. We need to add a new function in here. It's not one we've seen before, but it is kind of self-explanatory. So it's a love mouse pressed button, and it basically you're going to get the X position of the mouse, the Y position of the mouse, and which button is pressed. And I already know the left button is number 1, so I'm not going to look it up in the love page because it's so simple and self-explanatory. So function love, and this is mouse pressed. And you even get the right here, it's given it to us XY button. So I don't want the code to actually happen here because I need the editing to happen in game. Okay, but I don't want this function to be in game because this is a love function that we're defining. So I want it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass off. I can find out if the button is correct here and not bother with it if it's not the right mouse button that's being pressed. But if it is the right mouse button being pressed, I'm going to pass off the X and Y coordinates into a game method, and then it's going to sort it out from there. So the very first thing I'm going to do is check, is the button being pressed by the mouse? Is it the 1 button? If it's not 1 button, I don't need to worry about it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to a method I haven't created yet, so we're going to create that next. I'm going to call this edit board. And we're just going to pass in the X and the Y. Okay, and that is probably going to be everything for this file right now, unless there's a mistake in here somewhere. So in game, we need to create that method. And Lua and Love2D make it very easy to get the mouse. So function, game, edit, board. And we have the X and the Y coming in. This X and Y is the actual pixels, like wherever it is on the board. But we need to think about the board as in cells, not in pixels. So if we have a board that's 100 by 100 and our 100 pixels by 100 pixels and our cell size is 10, we actually need to think about it not as 100 by 100, but by 10 by 10, because we have 10 cells that fit in the, so we need to convert our mouse X position not to an X position as in pixels, but an X position as in cells. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to round it down to the floor and then add 1 because it's Lua, you know. So I'm going to create some local I'm going to create a local row and a column. And I'm going to take the X and turn it into the column and the Y and turn it into the row. I'm going to use math.floor for the rounding down. The reason why I'm rounding it down is because imagine the X position of the mouse is at 2 pixels, okay? And my cell size is 10 pixels. Well, everything from 0 pixels to 9 pixels is my cell. So if it's at 2 pixels, that's in my cell, right? If it's at 5 pixels or 6 pixels, it's still in my cell. I don't want it rounded up. If it rounds up, it'll round up to 10 and it'll be in the next cell over. I want it to round down. So if it's at 9 pixels, it's still rounding down to the 0 cell, which we're adding 1 and it'll be Lua's 1 cell or whatever. But when it hits 10, I want it to stay 10. So 0 to 9 is going to be 0. And then we add 1 to it, obviously because of Lua. You get the idea that the Lua plus 1 thing is always in effect. But so I'm rounding down always, but then I'm adding 1 to it to adjust for Lua. So I'm going to take Y, I'm going to divide it by cell, and then I'm going to add 1 to it for Lua. And I'm going to do the same thing with the column. Okay, so this is now going to convert our X and a Y to our row and column. But what happens, I don't know if you remember, but if the size of the cells isn't quite big enough, so if we have a cell, and our window looks like this, let's see here. But the edge of the window actually ends here. So this is a cell, this is a cell, this is a cell, this is a cell, this is not a cell. Because if you remember, it'll just leave a blank space there because there wasn't enough room to draw another cell. So if we forget about this fact and we click our mouse in this spot, it's trying to, mathematically it says there's a cell here, but our table does not contain a cell there and the game will crash. So we have to make sure that the cell that we've just calculated from our X and our Y coordinate is possible inside of the table. So we have to make sure that row is not bigger than rows and column is not bigger than columns. If we don't do that, we'll get crashes sometimes when you're clicking on the bottom side or the right side. Because it might have calculated where the cell should be, but it's not actually, the table doesn't actually cover that position. So I'm going to do that with if row is less than or equal to self.rows and column is less than or equal to self dot or columns. So that's going to make sure that our mouse click is within the possible area of our table, of our 2D table. Okay, so now the way that we're going to edit this is I'm going to look at the cell. I'm going to set the cell to 1 minus whatever's in the cell. The reason why I'm doing 1 minus whatever's in the cell is because if I take 1 and I subtract 0 from it, if there was nothing in the cell, say there was nothing in the cell and it was 0, if I take 1 and I subtract 0, I'm going to get 1. So now my cell was nothing and now it's something. If my cell is something, if I have 1 minus 1, because 1 is in what's in my cell, it turns into 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. So this toggles the cell from being on or off. So self board, and then we're going to use the row and the column. And we're going to set it equal to 1 minus whatever was there before. So this will, like I said, toggle whatever had been previously there. Okay, so let's give that a go. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. I'm going to click. See, it appeared. There's 3 right here. I'm going to click on the middle one to get rid of it. Get rid of that one, get rid of that one, get rid of this. Let's see if we can make a glider. Nah, I can't remember how to make a glider. I don't know what it is. Okay, so that works. We can click and unclick. If we clear it, we can click here. Oh, come on, one more spot. Okay. That looks like the correct way it should be going. Oh, we have a glider. There's a glider right there. Oh, that's what the glider shape looks like. Okay. So we can clear it. We can make a glider here. Is it that? No, that's not right. There we go. So there's the glider. It's going to go off the screen and come back on the bottom. Okay, let's check something else out. I want to make sure there's no crashes happening. I'm probably going to need a larger size. I'm going to change the cell size to like 45 or something. No. Okay, so right here, if I click here, if I've done it right, it shouldn't crash. Right here, because there's no cell that can be drawn here. Okay, that's not crashing. And that does work. And let's go down here. Not crashing. That does work. Up here, yeah, that's fine. So it's this part in here. If I hadn't put that check there, if I click in here, it would crash. And let me just show it to you real quick. Because I would be trying to access something that's not in the table, that's outside of the bounds. So right here, if I remove this check, oops. And now when I click here, we should get the blue screen of death. Okay, there we go. So the attempting to perform a arithmetic on a nil value, it's because we're outside of the bounds. Let's look at it again. So this is basically, we can, like I said, we can clear it. We could make different shapes. You can look up different shapes and how to make different moving objects and objects that react on other objects and stuff like that. This is a simple glider. It just always moves. There's all kinds of quite complicated shapes that we could use. Just looking, when it reaches here, it should automatically come here. Yep, there we go. Okay, so again, the size I put here is kind of big. I probably put it down to 10 maybe. Okay, so that is about everything. So that's Conway's Game of Life. There's lots of videos about it. It's very interesting. It's just a very simple concept that can just keep going and going and going. And you can make entire machines that send information. You know, you can build computers inside of it. Basically, you can build clocks, all kinds of stuff. So, but it's very easy to implement, and this kind of shows you how to use the draw and other things, and how to manipulate tables. So I think that's going to be about it. So that's just a simple one. That's Conway's Game of Life. And I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it was educational. And thanks for watching. That's going to be it. Bye.